If I can go back in time talking to my younger self who just came here as a young immigrant, a young international student, I would want her to know that you are different. You picked a very different journey from other people. And this adventure is inherently hard, and there are days you can feel very lonely. But this adventure can also be very meaningful and fulfilling. Welcome to the Immigrant Therapist. My name is Chenxi. I am a therapist born and raised in Shanghai and currently practice in Nashville. In today's episode, I would like to talk about something that's very personal to me, the feeling of loneliness and isolation in immigrants. This is something I've heard over and over again from my friends, from my clients, and from my personal experience too. In today's video, I want to talk about the cycle of isolation that we put ourselves through as immigrant, and what are some ways we can break the cycle of isolation. And I'm going to use my personal experience as an example to just show you how it works. The way I see the cycle of isolation, it looks like this. The first step, you perceive yourself as different, as lesser than. You experience self-doubt. And when you have that perception about yourself, you start to ask questions like, why would anyone want to hang out with me when I'm so different, when I'm less than them, when I speak English in an accent? And when you have these feeling of self-doubt and thoughts of why would anyone want to hang out with me, what would you do? Your action will be you start to isolate yourself physically. So next time where there's a party, friends, co-workers invite you to go somewhere, you are more likely to say no. Because you physically isolate yourself, then you are reinforcing the idea of I am different, I'm lesser than. Then the cycle just goes on and on. That's the bigger picture of the cycle. The cycle can look a little bit different for everyone. And I'm going to use myself as an example in talking about my cycle. This is something I never realized until recent years. Just seeing that cycle gave me a sense of relief, helped me understand more about why I feel this way. So this is how my cycle works. I feel different and I perceive myself as lesser than other. I feel different because I look around the room. Most likely there's no one that look like me. If I do see someone who look like me, a lot of time they're timid, they're shy, they're introverted, they don't talk much. And I didn't like that. I perceive my group, this group called international student or Chinese student or Chinese immigrant, I perceive our group as lesser than the average American group or maybe even other immigrants. As a result, I have this self-doubt. When I'm hanging out with my American peers, I always feel like, why do they want to hang out with me? Because deep down inside, I think we're not equal. If I dive down a little bit deeper, later I realize I actually feel like they are superior than me. I'm going to talk about why later, but let's keep talking about the cycle first. Because I become so self-conscious when I'm hanging out with peers, I perceive that they are speaking the language perfectly. They're making cultural references that I don't really understand what they mean, and I don't think I deserve the time and their effort to answer the question of what do you mean by saying blah 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 blah. So they just keep talking. They're not really aware that I didn't understand, and that's not their fault. I didn't speak up for myself. And then the experience is not great for me because you are hanging out with other people that you have no idea what they're talking about. So superficially, physically, I was there, but mentally, emotionally, I wasn't. I rejected that experience so much because being with these people just make me feel emotionally more isolated, reinforces the belief that I am different. I don't like that feeling. The first strategy and the easiest strategy we all gonna use is avoidance. In the past, the thing I do a lot is I try to avoid hanging out with them. If I can go to the class the last minute before the class start, I will do that. I will not sit in the class 10 minutes before the class started because that just makes me feel worse. It feels like, oh, I'm the only one who's alone, who has no friends in this class, while everyone else has someone they can talk to. So I isolate myself. I don't give myself the opportunity to even hang out with other people. As a result, I feel more different. I just live in this environment that reaffirm my belief that I'm different, I'm lesser than. No one wants to be friends with me. No one wants to explain the word that I don't understand to me. I'm living inside my bubble. There's a Chinese saying called 作茧自受, which means you make a cocoon and you're the moth and you're sitting in that cocoon, you isolate yourself. And I think that's a perfect metaphor for this situation. I would like you to pause for a second and reflect on what is your cycle of isolation. Why are you isolating yourself? And how do you reinforce that? Next, after you draw your cycle, after you're able to figure out your cycle of isolation, let's talk about how to break that cycle of isolation. As a therapist myself right now, it took me a lot of work, a lot of reflection, therapy, and also being a therapist myself to figure this out. And I would say it is difficult. It's very difficult, but it's also a very fulfilling journey. I want to make it easier for you. So let's do it together. The first step is you want to understand, where does your core belief come from? Say, my core belief about myself is that I'm lesser than the average Americans. Why is that? I realize it's actually because of the ideology instilled in me since I was a kid from my dad. My dad grew up in a very remote area in China. He basically grew up in a farm, and everyone in the farm has the same last name. So we all have the last name Zhu. And he was the only one, the first one who ever been to a college, and he went to a really good college. He was really smart, and he became an engineer. And then because of his talent at work, he got assigned to Shanghai, which is considered, the biggest city in China. He experienced this inferiority when he got into Shanghai. He described the first several days in Shanghai, people use a lot of discrimination. Shanghainese love to speak in their dialect. So when he couldn't speak dialect, people can see that there's a term called 外地人, which is you are outsider. And Shanghainese don't like outsiders. So he was being discriminated against. And he tried really hard to advance in his career. He formed a family and he married my mom, who's Shanghainese herself. So in that way, for him, he kind of overcome an inferiority a little bit by marrying to someone he perceived as having a higher socioeconomic status or geographical status, because she is someone who is from Shanghai. So naturally, in Chinese people's mind, if you're from Shanghai, from Beijing, you're kind of like a higher class than people from everywhere else. Not necessarily everyone believe in that way, but that's what my dad believed in. And then when he gave birth to me, because him overcoming his inferiority by moving to a remote area from China to the major city, he want me, who was born in Shanghai, a major city in China, to move someone even better, which at that time it is the United States of America. Everyone was trying so hard to send their kids abroad so that they receive Western education so they might have a better life. Although technically, I don't think they actually know what does better life mean. So from a young age, my dad would tell me how great the United States is. He would talk about when he traveled abroad, traveled to Europe, traveled to the US, what he saw, the food they ate, how talented they are, how many Nobel Prize winner, Harvard, MIT, all of that. And while he never said anything explicitly that we are lesser than Americans, the message itself is very clear. It's look at that country, look at the people. They're so much more advanced. They have so much things that we don't have. And the thing that we think are a luxury, it's just real easy to get it there. So in my young mind, I started to think about we are lesser than America. And that idea got reinforced when I started to become an athlete in a combat sport. There is a saying that Chinese do great at a sport when there is a net or there's some kind of barrier between our team and our opponent's team. But full contact sports, there's not a net between the two of you. You're gonna have physical impact with each other. When my dad first learned, I started competing in boxing, in jiu-jitsu. What he said was, well, these are strong American girls growing up eating butter, drinking milk. How would you be able to compete against them? What it also implied is he is predicting if we are in a competition, then even before the match start, I lost some advantage because I'm not as strong as them, because I didn't grow up eating butter, drinking milk, which I actually did growing up drinking milk. But you can see is a lot of message that we received from our society, from the media, from our parents, from our teachers. They start to help us form this belief of what the United States looks like, what our country look like, what people who were born there look like, what we look like. And they depict this gap intentionally or unintentionally. That is how we form this belief about how we fit into this country. And once I understand that storyline, I start to challenge it. I start to realize there's not a rule, there's not a truth that says because I'm Chinese, I'm lesser than American, I'm less strong than them. It's just the story that I was told by my father, who himself is overcoming some of the inferiority in himself. So when I understood my worldview coming from him, then I start to realize I can actually change the way I see life. I can get closer to the truth, and the truth serves me better And here are some of the truths that help me break the cycle of isolation and inferiority. The first truth is I accept myself. I am different. I'm not just different from all the American peers here. I'm also different from people back home, from my home country. I'm different in the sense that I picked a very different journey. And this journey is difficult, it's challenging itself. But I'm the one who's responsible for it. I chose to stay here. I chose to be an immigrant away from home. Because I picked this journey, I have to make it work. And since I'm already on this journey, I might as well make 100% out of it. That kind of acceptance helped me and also will help you to give yourself the sense of control. There are a lot of things that you cannot control in the external world. You cannot change everyone else to understand your situation. But what it can do is it helps you to see that within the cycle of control, you can maximize it. There are a lot of things you can do on your own to make this journey worth it. And that leads us to the second truth. As an immigrant, as someone who is different, you are not going to make friends with everyone, or I would say you're not going to make friends with the majority of people in the society. You need to have a high criteria for making friends, and that's okay. It does not mean that I'm being condescending or I'm being superior. It simply means because the fact that I am different, I am the minority, I have to also be with the minority. These will be the people who might also be immigrants. They might travel internationally. They like other cultures. They're more open to other cultures. You need to look at the right place in order to find these people. So it's important for us to know that if you try to make friends with someone, it didn't work, it's not because of you. It's just because it's not right fit. That's it. Very simple. Don't take it personally. Because the rejection is a very difficult part that can reinforce the sense of isolation in us, in immigrants. And the last truth, which I also think is the most important part of it, is while you're understanding all of these, you have to take action. You have to try bravely. You have to dare greatly. No progress will be made if you don't try, if you don't fail. And failure is a necessary process. Failure can mean that a lot of days you just feel so isolated and you look out of the window and realize you have no friends to call. Failure can mean that you feel so anxious, so nervous going to talk to a stranger, or just saying hi to someone in the park when you walk past them. These are all things that we are going to experience. They're difficult things, but what matters, even when you are experiencing all these sense of inferiority, the shyness, the anxiety of speaking the language, the risk of look like you're dumb, you still do it regardless. That is what actually matters. It is an ongoing journey. You're going to challenge yourself again and again. Breaking the cycle takes time, but every time you try, it becomes a little bit easier the next time. And it's totally worth it. It's a lot of work, but it's totally worth it. And I want to invite each one of you who's watching the video to leave a comment. Tell me about what do you believe is your cycle of isolation. How do you see yourself? How do you perceive yourself? And how would you like to perceive yourself instead? Let's do this together and make this journey meaningful and less isolated. If you're new to my channel, please subscribe and share this video with anyone who you think might benefit from it. That's it for today. See you in the next one. Bye.